The lesson outcome for this video is I can factor quadratic expressions, and this is a continuation of magic number or the AC method, whichever one you want to call it. Okay, so we have 6x squared plus 13x minus 5. I'm going to walk through this example again with you. Make sure you're following along, writing the steps down, pausing and rewinding if you're like, wait, what just happened there? And then on the next screen, I'm going to have you try a couple of them on your own in your notes, and I'm going to check those the next time we meet in class. Okay, so our first step in this problem is to multiply the A and the C, and we're going to write that number over here, right? So remember that this is where A is found, B, and C. So we're going to multiply A, which is 6, times C, which is negative 5. Remember, C is negative 5 here. You can't miss the sign in front of that number. 6 times negative 5, these two multiplied together, is negative 30. And remember, we're also going to include the x squared. So it's kind of like multiplying the first term and the last term. 6x squared times negative 5 is negative 30x squared. We need to write down all factors of negative 30x squared. So we know 1 times 30 is 30, but we need one of them to be negative to get negative 30, and we want to put the x's with that. We also know that 2 times 15 is 30. We need one to be negative, and the x's are going to go in there as well. We know 3 times 10 is 30. Put a 1 negative and the x's. It's not divisible by 4. It is, however, divisible by 5. And it's 5 times 6, and make one of them negative. Here are the 4 options. Which of these adds up to 13? Again, we're looking for the factor pair that when we add them, we get the B term, the middle term, 13x. Well, hopefully you notice it's these right here. Negative 2x plus 15x is 13x. All right, so we're going to go back over to our expression, and I take the A term and the C term, and I rewrite them, and again, I write them a little further out, so I've got a little more space here, because instead of one term in the middle, I'm going to put 2 terms. So minus 2x plus 15x. Again, I take these two things right here as they are and put them in here. If there's no symbol in front, it's plus. If you wanted to put the plus there, you sure could. All right, now we take and break up our 4 terms, 1, 2, 3, 4 terms, into 2 groups of 2 by putting a vertical line right here. Now we factor the GCF of each side of that pink line, factor out the GCF. So over here, just don't worry about anything else on the whole screen. This right here is what we're factoring the GCF out of. 6 and 2 have a common factor of 2. That's the greatest number we can divide both of them by evenly. X squared and x means that they both have an x in them. We can take an x out as well. So we're going to factor out a 2 and an x from this side of the pink line. 6 divided by 2 is 3. And if I have an x squared and I factor out an x, I'm going to be left with x. The minus sign comes straight down in there as long as we're not factoring out a negative. And now 2x, now this one's tricky. We factor out 2x. Now if you have 2x and you factor out 2x, sometimes people think that this is 0 or they don't have to put anything in here. That is untrue, because what you have to think about is 2 times what number gives us 2. And that number is not 0, because 2 times 0 is 0. 2 times 1 is 2. We need a 1 right here. We factored out the x, so we don't need an x. Now we're going to do the same thing on the right-hand side of that pink line. Over here, 15, the factors of 15 are 1 and 15. Now if you wanted to jot these down somewhere, you could. 1 and 15, and 3 and 5. And the factors of 5 are 1 and 5. The greatest common factor then is 5. Remember that this plus sign should go straight down in here, and if it's a negative, it should be a negative right there. And we're going to factor out a 5. 15 divided by 5 is 3. I did not factor out an x, so the x stays in the parentheses. The minus sign again comes straight down. And then here we are again with 5, and we factored out the 5. Well, what number goes here then? Well, let's look up here. If we factor out a 5, what's left? A 1. And that's a good deal, because if you notice, our parentheses match, and that's what needs to happen if we're doing it correctly. If you have parentheses that match, write that down, and if you don't, find your mistake. And after you write that down, you're going to have another set of parentheses over here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take what we had, take what's left in this term. So this term right here, if I'm factoring out this, right there, I'm left with 2x. So that 2x is going to come over into here. And then in our other term right here, if I factor out this 3x minus 1, I'm left with plus 5. So I'm going to write that right there. And we have now factored that quadratic expression. If you were to use FOIL, if we were to use FOIL or the array method and multiply these two binomials together, we will end up with this expression. Okay, like I mentioned on the previous slide, I'm actually just going to have one problem here. 2x squared minus 15x plus 18. I want you to work very hard to try to figure out what the factors will be for this using our magic number steps, and then I will be checking that in class. All right, rewatch the previous example if you need to, and good luck.